Hi, welcome to week 5 of the American Musical Theater class. This week we will go through the musical Rent through page 408 in your textbook. Also, you need to be really working on that final paper, getting those ideas into me if you haven't already. There are handouts and resources that give you guidelines and some student examples, so be sure you check those out. Your assignments for the final paper topics need to be finished so that I can approve your topic. Remember, this is a formal research paper, and it must have a focus, it must advance an idea, it must have research behind it. I have to see how you use your sources. Grammar counts as well. So let's see. Let me find where I'm supposed to be here. So this week begins going into a little bit more depth with David Merrick. Remember, he was our ruthless promoter who spanned a 40-year career, produced dozens of shows, including Hello Dolly and 42nd Street. 42nd Street was the first of a string of movie musicals that were then secondarily adapted to the Broadway stage. 42nd Street ran for 6 years. Broadway at the end of the 20th century, some important points about that for you to remember is that this movement from film to stage musical happened, of course. And there was also a lack of money available. So revivals became important. If a show was successful 50 years ago and everybody loved it, let's bring it back and see if we can do something new with it but make money because of the name of it. Advertising was going to become major now, not just people coming to New York and seeing the shows, but advertising worldwide. Theatrical costs are going to skyrocket, so producers have to become money makers and they have to become promoters. Another thing that's important is the regional theaters that have taken center stage and have become very important in the development of new shows. Let's see, what else do we have here? Okay, my computer is not doing well with me today. Hang on, let's see. The British invasion, that was really important. 1982, Andrew Lloyd Webber and T.S. Eliot's poems came together to produce the first mega British invasion hit that comes to Broadway called Cats. It ended up running for 18 years on Broadway with 7,000 performances, and at that point was the longest in Broadway history. It's not a book musical, it's more like a review and heavy on the spectacle. It also introduced us to a new person in the theater game called Cameron McIntosh, a producer. He redefined the formula for success. He realized that he could produce shows in London for half the cost that it cost to develop them on Broadway. Once they were a success on London, the stage, he could bring them to New York and thus make more money and assure the success. Phantom of the Opera is such a show that happened this way. By the way, Phantom has gone on now to be the most successful show ever with 10,000 plus performances and still running. Mega hit musicals then become really important to the lifeblood of Broadway. Some of their characteristics are that they require and rely on spectacle and larger than life emotions. They also changed the way shows are promoted, and you'll see more about that in the documentary for this week. McIntosh's shows have grossed more than $8 billion worldwide to date, so the British invasion and this new way of doing mega hits and touring with them has really produced a lot of money. Another problem I see with it is not just the fact that the shows have to have a lot of money to get off the ground, but the mega hit musicals have produced a more generic sound in Broadway. So the pop music, pop style of singing has become more predominant. If you have a show that's going to go on tour and you have 5 tours happening worldwide, you're going to want all your singers to sound the same. So basically, people get the parts because they can sound more like the person in the original soundcast recording, or because they're a big star in the pop world. So to me, that's something I don't really care for, but it's been a trend. Prince and Sondheim stopped working together after 1980. In 1984, Sondheim teamed up with book writer and lyricist James Lapine to put together a completely different type of a musical. It was called Sunday in the Park with George, and it is on your core viewing for this week. It was inspired by a painting, a pointillist painting from the 18th century by Georges Seurat, or Seurat, I should say. Nobody knows anything about his life, so they completely fabricated the story, but turned it into a play about how artists created and the lonely life of an intense artist. Very interesting. Another major milestone was Jerry Herman's La Cage aux Folles. It followed conventional musical theater form in the fact that it had hummable tunes and the way that the show was structured. But it was very unconventional in that it had two gay characters at the heart of the romance. First time on stage, a man sang a love song to another man, and, most importantly, the first gay musical to be successful at the box office. At this point, too, AIDS was coming to the forefront, and so we see Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS happening, and something that is still happening. When you go to see a road show, like in Denver, when I've gone to them, they're always there trying to continue to gain money from audience members to help in the fight of AIDS. Another major influence into the 20th century was corporate influence on Broadway. Disney's string of animated hit movies with music are going to be translated now into Broadway shows. It began with The Little Mermaid in 1989. 1994, Beauty and the Beast needed, they actually needed a better theater that could handle all the technical difficulties and requirements. So Disney decided to go ahead and revamp the New Amsterdam Theater, which is the one that Ziegfeld used in the early 1900s for the Follies. But he also needed some assurance that families could be attracted to Broadway because Times Square was pretty seedy at the time. So the mayor of New York City at the time, assured Michael Eisner of Disney that they would clean up Times Square, and they did, and the rest is history. The Lion King then came along in 1997, and between The Lion King and Beauty and the Beast, now these shows have grossed more than $2 billion each in various worldwide productions. And the last major show that is focused on in your textbook is Rent. It happened because in 1995, a young visionary named Jonathan Larson decided to quit his day job and put all of his effort into making Broadway attractive to a new generation that had been raised on rock and roll and MTV. So he updated an old Puccini opera called La Boheme and set it in New York City's East Village with lots of social outcasts, and Rent was born. He knew a lot of people who were dying from AIDS. He knew a lot about personal loss and how to move forward, and so Rent became kind of an anthem for this. However, the night before the first preview, Jonathan Larson himself died from an undiagnosed heart problem at the age of 35. Rent began off-Broadway and moved to Broadway in 1996, won the Pulitzer Prize, and lots of Tonys. It ran for 12 years with over 5,000 performances. So that's a look at what's going to happen this week as you read your book, the things that I need you to focus on. Keep submitting, even that late work, get it into me, and I'll see you online.